the Germans and killing those that had murdered her brother in cold blood. She was certain no British pilot would do such a thing. The kitchen was unpleasantly hot, so she continued into the sitting room, which was cooler. She wandered about, picking up and reading an occasional sympathy card from those scattered along the windowsill and mantelpiece. Did one reply to these? She didn't know the addresses of half of them. The parish magazine was no longer printed because of the paper shortage, or they could have put a notice in that. Maybe the vicar would make an announcement. Anyway, she wasn't going to do it. She couldn't even write to her friends Daisy and Mary, as by the time her letter had been sent to a central post box and then delivered secretly to the radar station they were posted at, she would be back. Telephone calls were also banned. Even her parents and fiancé, Greg, didn't know what she was actually doing. They just thought she was involved with something to do with radio operations. It was all very hush-hush. She would leave tomorrow. She couldn't stay here with nothing to do and too much time to think of what she'd lost. Keeping busy was the answer. Unable to settle, she made her way to the bedroom. Her eyes filled when she passed what used to be Neil's room. Next to it, George's room. Neither of them would ever be used by her brothers again. Perhaps there was something of Neil's left in his wardrobe she could have as a memento and take back with her. Of course she had a photograph, but something more personal would help with her grief. There was a war on. 3 families in the village had lost loved ones as well. She had to get a grip and stop wallowing in her misery. Dad and Mabel were quieter than usual, but they were getting on with their lives. She put her hand on the door of Neil's room, but couldn't bring herself to open it. Too soon. Instead, she went into her own bedroom and stretched out on the bed. She could hear the murmur of voices coming through the open window.
"Fred, love, I'm that worried about Ellie. She's taken this hard. I don't like to bring up the subject of her wedding, not when she's so down."
"She was close to Neil. It'll take her a while to get used to the idea. Greg said he was going to contact the vicar and get the banns read so they could be married as soon as they can coordinate home leave. With that bastard Hitler about to invade us, I don't see either of them getting time off in the next few months. So there's no rush, love. Let things settle a bit."
Ellie was now sitting up on her bed, listening. She couldn't remember the last time she'd heard her father say so much. He was a quiet man, not given to talking unless he had something pertinent to say. He was right. The likelihood of there being a wedding in the next few weeks was 0. She wouldn't even think about the possibility that the man she loved, the man she was going to marry as soon as she could, might lose his life in the forthcoming battle. Nevertheless, planning her big day with her father and Mabel would give them something positive to think about. What she needed was some paper and a pencil to start making notes. It would have to be simple. With rationing, there was no getting enough dried fruit and sugar to make a wedding cake. At least being a farm meant they had plenty of dairy products, eggs and meat. They were only supposed to keep back what would be theirs under the rationing rules, but who could possibly know if they didn't send it all to the designated shops? As long as they fulfilled their quota, she was certain no one would come out and check. As she was rummaging through the debris on her dressing table, she came across the information Jack had given her about the ATA. So many pilots had been killed or injured when the BEF was evacuated from the beaches of Dunkirk. They now needed every able-bodied trained flyer on active service. This meant that the RAF pilots being used to ferry aircraft, mail and personnel from base to base had been withdrawn from the Air Transport Auxiliary. Although the bigwigs in the RAF were obviously not trying to actively recruit women pilots, the form was aimed at men. After scanning the paper, she found her fountain pen and quickly filled it in. Some details she had to leave, whilst she found her logbook and copied out the hours she had spent instructing or solo flying and which aircraft she was familiar with. Surely they would jump at the chance of having someone with so much experience, someone who had trained dozens of young pilots for the RAF. The only downside was that she was so young. They might think her too immature to take on such a responsibility. After blotting the form, she carefully folded it and pushed it into an envelope. There was little point in sending it to the main office. She would send it to Hatfield, where she knew there were already a dozen or so women pilots. There were still 3 stamps left in her stationery wallet. This must be an omen. One for the